What's the creepiest / most unexplained thing you've seen in broad daylight? I used to live on a farm, and one morning there was a full horse leg on our driveway. Like still had part of the hip attached and was fresh. We sprinted down to our horse paddock to find all our horses completely fine. We disposed of the leg and never got an explanation. Very creepy. Peas. This happened in Canberra, Australia, so there's no mountain lions or bears around here. My dad, brother, and I went to a movie theater one day in Florida. Was around 4-ish, so it was getting darker but still light out. We went up to the front where you buy tickets, and when we looked around there was absolutely no one in the movie theater at all. No employees, no other guests. We simply walked in, looking all around to try to find anyone we could to purchase a movie ticket, but could find no one else. All the movies in each of the theaters we checked were running, but with no one else inside. So we just sat down and watched a movie, then left without seeing anyone else the whole time. It was very surreal. It was 1984, I was 15 years old and was alone at my older sister's house. It was late morning, I had just got out of the shower, still wrapped in a towel, when I heard a noise outside. I looked out a window and watched a complete stranger tying the doorknob of the main entrance to the railing of the deck with a rope I used to walk the dog with. He then leaned a mop, that was on the deck, against the door. I called my sister, told her what happened, got dressed, got the heck out of the house through a different door and hid in the bushes until police arrived. The house was somewhat remote with no close neighbors. Found out later the door he tied up was unlocked. No clue how long he had been lurking around before I knew of his presence. To this day we have no idea who that was and what his motives were. Beyond creepy, definitely unexplained. When I was young, me and my cousins found a bloody shirt in our woods. My cousins and their parents hunted, so we thought maybe it was from that. But then we found a Ziploc bag with shoes and shorts. All had to be from an extremely petite woman or an older kid. When we told our uncle about it, we got punished and weren't allowed to talk about it. I don't speak to them anymore, but really makes you wonder. While this can be explained, the image still creeps me out to this day. It was around the time of planking craze. I had no idea what it was and hadn't heard anything about it. Got a taxi into town and was walking around the city center and life was normal. I then take a turn into the town square and there was around 200 people planking everywhere on everything. I don't know what was going on. I thought there may have been gunshots or a bomb. Or maybe the world was ending. I then asked someone next to me and they explained it and we laughed it off, but for that brief moment of time I'll never forget that uneasy feeling. Edit, my most upvoted comment is about my PTSD, equals planking traumatic stress disorder. I believe there is a name for this phenomena, but I would never know how to go about googling such a thing. But this was around 2013 or so, and I was having a smoke in front of my apartment on the front steps in the middle of the day, around noon or so. I got up to head back, and just for a few fleeting seconds while looking at the building, it looked totally unfamiliar. I knew I lived there, I knew it was my home, I knew I had just stepped outside only 5 minutes previously, but my brain was giving me some kind of indication that I had never seen this place before and that there was danger inherent. I just kinda violently wagged my head back and forth, like an aggressive no gesture, and was immediately back to normal. But I'll never forget that moment. It was like my concept of reality had very momentarily just cracked. A man with freshly exposed bone on his arm and missing a substantial amount of skin and muscle walked up to me in a parking lot asking me calmly for cigarettes. It really freaked me out, and told him I was calling 911 for him. He immediately ran off and I gave his description to 911. There wasn't much blood, but the guy clearly needed immediate medical attention. This was in San Jose on an afternoon about 5 to 6 years ago. Still have that image giving me nightmares to this day. My family had the car packed up for a road trip because we were moving across the country from the PNW to the Rust Belt. We were heading to the highway to get out of town and had to take some weird access road to get there. On the way, there was some man holding a long barrel rifle to a woman's head, walking through a vegetable garden. He was holding it with one hand, and had a cigarette in his mouth. The woman was crying. My mom didn't believe me. I was 14, I know what I saw. Crossing at a busy intersection and seeing my perfect double walk towards me. We basically eyes locked until we passed each other. A total mindfuck. Even more disturbing. Instead of stopping and chatting and being amused by the entire biological coincidence, my immediate subconscious reaction was a massive rising internal rage that someone, somehow had stolen my face. Very, very weird. When I was a kid, there was a field near my house in rural Florida that glowed rainbow colors. The grass had different shades of color, all day long. That field got bought up and bulldozed decades ago for a farm, however. This is my dad's story, not mine. In the 80s, my dad was in the Peace Corps and lived in Sierra Leone for 3 years. He had a motorcycle, or some sort of motorbike at least at one point, and would ride around the roads when he had free time. One day he's riding a dirt road that snakes around a small mountainside or hillside past some construction works. About half a mile after the roadwork, he sees a man on the side of this dirt road on the mountain/hillside just laughing his butt off. And he was blue. Not like painted blue, but blue. At first my dad rode on, thinking nothing of it. And then it sunk in, that he saw a blue dude sitting on the side of a dirt road laughing wildly. He turned around and rode back to where he saw the blue dude, and there was nothing there. He kept retracing his path beyond the roadwork and never saw the blue guy again. Later that day he went back to the village he was living in at the time and told the locals about what he had seen. The locals all laughed and said, essentially, no you didn't. White men can't see devils. Edit, beyond the color of his skin, what made this even more spooky to my dad was the way the guy just completely disappeared when he backtracked. There was nowhere for him to go off the road, due to it being on a hillside, and he never found him again on the road, making it seem as if the blue man simply vanished off the face of the earth. Edit 2, talked to my dad more about this afternoon. He said the color of his skin was, like, bright blue, like unnaturally blue, bright blue. He also said he could hear the voice of the guy in his head, like he was talking directly into my dad's mind, telepathy style. On a trip to Gulf Shores, Alabama. Stopped to gas up at some rundown gas station that was also a truck stop in Mississippi. Went to the bathroom, and as I'm standing at the urinal I had the strangest feeling that something was off. This strange feeling overwhelmed the entire left side of my body. I don't claim to be supernatural or have any weird feelings/premonitions, and I have never experienced that feeling before that day or since. Anyways, I get up on my tippy toes to look to my left where the stalls were located. There was this deranged looking white guy with nasty, greasy ass hair and a fucked up scowl on his face staring directly at me. The most typical looking psycho killer you could imagine. He had to have been standing on the toilet because I could see his whole face and the upper part of his shoulders. Immediately zipped up and got the fuck out of Dodge. Didn't even wash my hands. Creepy but explainable. My dad is a paramedic, and one call took him to an SUV that had driven into the river and was being towed out. The car was obviously not working, and the 2 guys inside had already passed away. As they're pulling the dead guys out of the car, suddenly all the lights flash on, the windshield wipers start going on full speed, and the car starts blaring the radio at max volume. Freaked everyone right out. An older man watching me at a gas station and then literally following me for miles around town. Like if I turned into a parking lot and started driving another road, he still followed me. I got on a 4-lane road in the left lane and got beside someone, then sped up and merged while taking an exit, so the guy was blocked by the pickup truck in the right lane. That's probably the scariest thing I've ever had happen in broad daylight. Not really creepy, but I was walking down the street on my way to the store when a large dog jumped through a glass window from a second story of a house and landed on the front lawn. I tried knocking on the door and got no answer from them or any of their neighbors, so I called animal control and stayed with the dog, who other than a few scratches was okay. Once they arrived, they called the police to investigate because even the animal control lady had no clue what would cause a dog to do that. Edit, the dog did not knock on the door.
Letting the blow, plus getting the dough. We be checking your hole while you sweating the flow. I be intellectual, incredible, flexible. I turn the virgin sexual, impeccable, but technical. I be the first letter, you ain't know. Check the alphabetical order. My natural elements, chemical shorter to leave it cruel. More bloodier, dimensional waters on the 28th. Your thoughts are pennyweight. I'ma generate these bonds. Watch as I detonate. At any rate, I separate like races. Niggas segregate you featherweights.